The desperate signal, the Discovery Commander Sarah. Chen floated in the observation deck of monitoring station Titan 7, watching the distant glow of Saturn's rings through the reinforced viewport. The coffee bulb in her hand had grown cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. Space duty meant endless shifts of monitoring deep space communications, searching for patterns in the cosmic noise that might indicate intelligent life. After 15 years of service, she had grown accustomed to the routine silence of the void. The station itself was humanity's most advanced listening post, positioned at the edge of the solar system where interference from Earth's broadcasts was minimal. Its massive antenna arrays could detect signals from thousands of light years away, sifting through radio waves, quantum transmissions, and exotic particle streams that crossed the galaxy. Most days brought nothing but the background radiation of dying stars and the occasional burst from a pulsar. Today would be different. Lieutenant Alex Rodriguez suddenly straightened at his console, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface as cascading data streams filled his monitors. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems and the distant vibration of the station's rotation. Other crew members turned to look as Rodriguez's face grew pale. "Commander, we have something," Rodriguez announced, his voice tight with excitement and concern. "I'm reading an encrypted transmission from the Kepler 438 system. The signal strength is incredible, but it's heavily damaged by interstellar interference." Chen pushed off from the viewport and glided over to Rodriguez's station. The signal originated from a system over 50 light-years away, far beyond the range of human exploration. Whatever had sent this message possessed technology that made humanity's most advanced communications systems look primitive by comparison. "Can you clean it up?" Chen asked, studying the wavelength patterns on the display. Rodriguez worked frantically for several minutes, applying every filter and enhancement algorithm at his disposal. Slowly, the static began to clear, revealing something that made everyone on the bridge hold their breath. It was definitely artificial, definitely intelligent, and definitely not human. "Got it," Rodriguez whispered, running it through the universal translation matrix now. The speakers crackled with alien sounds, harsh and musical at the same time. The translation software struggled, throwing up probability matrices and linguistic pattern analyzers before finally settling on broken English. When the voice emerged from the static, it carried a desperation that transcended species barriers. "To any civilization capable of receiving this transmission, I am Ambassador Kellen of the Zephyrian Coalition. Our worlds burn, our cities fall, and our children flee into the darkness of space. The Void Reapers have come to our system like a plague of living metal and consuming fire." The voice paused, and in the background they could hear the sound of explosions and the screaming of atmospheric alarms. When Kellen continued, the desperation in his voice was heartbreaking. "We are a peaceful people. We have never known war, never built weapons of mass destruction, never prepared for conflict beyond our world. The Reapers came without warning, without demands, without mercy. They do not seek our resources or our territory. They seek only our complete annihilation." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. The implications were staggering. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it came wrapped in a nightmare. "Our science vessels detected their approach 3 cycles ago. We attempted communication, offered trade, offered submission, offered everything we possessed. They responded with weapons that tear apart molecular bonds and ships that phase through our defenses like ghosts through walls. The transmission continued, painting a picture of systematic genocide. The Zephyrians described orbital bombardments that stripped atmospheres from planets, ground forces that hunted survivors with mechanical precision, and technology that seemed to violate the known laws of physics. We have heard whispers in the quantum foam, fragments of transmissions from a species that calls itself human. The data suggests you come from a world of incredible danger, a planet that should have destroyed you before you learned to build tools. Our scientists believe this may have made you strong in ways we cannot comprehend. Rodriguez looked up from his console, his face grave. Commander, this transmission was sent 8 months ago. Based on the signal degradation and the distance involved, whatever happened to the Zephyr IANS... it's already over. Understanding the threat, Chen immediately ordered the message to be forwarded to Earth Command, with priority Alpha clearance. Within hours, the most brilliant minds in human space were analyzing every detail of the alien transmission. Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of the Xenobiology Division, led the analysis team from her laboratory in the Lunar Research Complex. The had included detailed scans of the Void Reaper fleet in their final transmission. What humanity saw defied every assumption they had made about space warfare. The enemy ships were massive constructs of black metal and pulsing energy, each vessel the size of a small city. They moved through space like living creatures, their hulls shifting and adapting to different environments. The technology is beyond anything in our current understanding. Dr. Vasquez reported during an emergency briefing with Earth's military leadership. These ships appear to be partially biological, partially mechanical. They can regenerate damage, adapt to new weapons, and coordinate their actions with a level of efficiency that suggests a hive mind. Admiral Marquis Webb, commander of Earth's Deep Space Defense Fleet, studied the tactical displays with growing concern. He had fought in the colonial wars and countless smaller conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for an enemy like this. The Void Reapers didn't follow conventional military doctrine. They were apex predators who had turned warfare into an art form. "How many ships are we looking at?" Webb asked. "Based on the Zephyrian scans, approximately 3,000 vessels, of various sizes," Dr. Vasquez replied. "The smallest are roughly equivalent to our heavy cruisers. The largest are, well, they're mobile space stations capable of destroying entire planets." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's entire military consisted of fewer than 800 combat vessels, most of which were designed for peacekeeping, operations and colonial defense. Against an enemy fleet of this magnitude, conventional tactics would be suicide. Dr. Michael Chen, Sarah's brother, and a specialist in comparative evolution, activated his own display. His research had focused on how different environmental pressures shaped the development of intelligent species. What he had discovered about the Void Reapers was both fascinating and terrifying. The Reapers evolved on a world with extreme conditions, but those conditions were stable, he explained. High gravity, toxic atmosphere, intense radiation, but these dangers remained constant for millions of years. They adapted to become perfect killing machines, but only for specific, predictable threats. Admiral Webb leaned forward. "What's your point? Dr. Earth was different. Our planet tried to kill us in every way imaginable. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, pandemics, predators, natural disasters that changed constantly. We didn't adapt to specific threats. We adapted to uncertainty itself. We learned to survive anything." Dr. Elena Vasquez nodded in agreement. The Zephyrians mentioned something interesting in their transmission. They said we come from a world of incredible danger that should have destroyed us. They're not wrong. Most intelligent species evolve on relatively stable worlds where cooperation and peaceful development are possible. Earth was a death world that forced us to become something different. The concept of humans as death worlders wasn't new to xenobiology theory, but it had always been speculation. Now, faced with an enemy that had destroyed dozens of peaceful civilizations, it might be humanity's only advantage. The human response within 24 hours of receiving the Zephyrian transmission. President Maria Santos convened an emergency session of the Solar Defense Council. Representatives from every human colony, military installation, and research facility gathered in the secure chambers beneath Geneva. The holographic displays showed the grim intelligence that Titan VII had intercepted, and the mood in the room was somber. Ladies and gentlemen, we face a threat that could end human civilization. President Santos began, her voice carrying the weight of leadership during humanity's darkest hour. The Void Reapers have already destroyed 47 known species. Based on their trajectory and the patterns we've observed, Earth will be their next target. General Patriciales, head of colonial defense, stood to address the assembly. Our intelligence suggests the Reapers move systematically through the galaxy, eliminating any species that could pose a future threat. They've been tracking our radio transmissions for decades. They know exactly where we are. Senator Robert Kim from the Mars colony raised his hand. General, what are our options? Can we negotiate with them? Based on the Zephyrian data, the Void Reapers do not negotiate, Hayes replied grimly. They do not take prisoners. They do not accept surrender. Their only goal is the complete extermination of any species they encounter. Diplomacy is not an option. Dr. Elena Vasquez activated a display showing Void Reaper physiology. The aliens were enormous creatures, standing nearly 4 meters tall, with natural armor plating and integrated weapon systems. They had evolved as apex predators on a world where violence was the primary means of survival. The key difference between the Reapers and their previous victims is adaptation speed, Dr. Vasquez explained. The Zephyrians and other peaceful species had thousands of years to develop advanced technology, but they never faced existential threats. When the Reapers attacked, they couldn't adapt quickly enough to survive. Admiral Webb stood up, his weathered face set in determination. Which brings us to our response. I am recommending immediate implementation of Protocol Omega. Every human colony, every research station, every civilian outpost will be placed under military authority. We are mobilizing for total war. Protocol Omega had been theoretical until this moment, a worst-case scenario that military planners hoped would never be needed. It would transform human civilization from a peaceful, exploring species into a unified war machine focused on survival at any cost. Preparation for war, the transformation of human space began immediately. Peaceful mining stations became heavily fortified weapons platforms. Research facilities were converted to weapons manufacturing centers. Even civilian transport ships were retrofitted with military-grade armor and weaponry that violated several interstellar treaties humanity had signed. With itself, Captain Lisa Park oversaw the most classified project of all. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, beyond the orbit of Pluto, a team of engineers and scientists worked around the clock on weapons that had been banned by every civilized nation on Earth. The Emergency Powers Act had suspended those restrictions indefinitely. The Nova-class missiles are coming online ahead of schedule, Park reported to Admiral Webb during their daily briefing. "We'll have 15 planet-killer warheads ready within the month. The quantum disruption bombs are still experimental, but early tests show they can collapse matter at the subatomic level." Webb studied the technical specifications with a mixture of pride and horror. These weapons could eliminate entire star systems, turning them into cosmic graveyards. "I hope we never have to use these things, Lisa. But if the Reapers want to play extinction games, we'll show them how Deathworlders end the game." Meanwhile, Dr. Michael Chen made a breakthrough that changed everything. While analyzing captured Void Reaper technology from the Zephyrin scans, he discovered something remarkable about their psychology and tactics. The Reapers had conquered so many species that they had developed predictable patterns of attack. They're used to fighting civilizations that evolved cooperation and peaceful coexistence. He explained to a gathering of military commanders. When threatened, most species either submit immediately or fight defensively. The Reapers have built their entire military doctrine around these assumptions. Colonel Maria Santos, the president's daughter and leader of the Special Operations Division, grinned at the implications. "So they've never fought anyone crazy enough to attack them first." "Exactly," Dr. Chen replied. "Every species they've encountered has been reactive. They study their enemies, learn their weaknesses, then exploit them methodically. But they've never faced a species that fights dirty, adapts in real time, and refuses to follow conventional military logic." Admiral Webb felt a spark of hope for the first time since receiving the alien transmission. "Then we give them something they've never seen before. We don't fight their war, we fight our war." The next few weeks saw the largest military mobilization in human history. Ships were pulled from patrol duties across the galaxy and retrofitted for deep space combat. Civilian crews volunteered for dangerous missions, knowing that Earth's survival depended on their sacrifice. The asteroid belt became a massive weapons factory, churning out missiles, armor plating, and exotic weapons that pushed the boundaries of human technology. As the fleet assembled, Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defiance, watching hundreds of ships take formation around him. Each vessel represented humanity's refusal to go quietly into extinction. Were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had never known defeat. But they were Deathworlders, children of a planet that had tried to kill them for millions of years. And they were going to show the Void Reapers what happened when someone threatened their home. Deathworlders' unleashed journey to battle the human fleet departed from Lunar Station in the largest military formation in the species' history. 350 vessels, ranging from massive dreadnoughts to nimble fighters, jumped into hyperspace with a single destination, the Kepler 438 system, 50 light-years from Earth. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars stretch into lines as they entered. Faster than light travel, the journey would take 6 days using humanity's most advanced jump drives. During that time, the fleet maintained constant communication, running tactical simulations and refining their battle plans. Unlike previous military operations, this wasn't about territorial expansion or resource acquisition. This was about survival as a species. Captain Jennifer Walsh commanded the reconnaissance vessel U.S. Shadow, designed for stealth operations and intelligence gathering. Her ship had been extensively modified with Zephyrian technology salvaged from the alien transmission data. The quantum sensors could detect enemy movements from unprecedented distances, giving the human fleet their only advantage against a superior enemy. "Admiral, we're approaching the target system," Walsh reported over the fleet communication network. dropping to sublight speed for passive scanning. As the human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 438 system, what they found exceeded their worst fears. The system had once been home to a thriving civilization spanning 5 planets and dozens of space stations. Now everything lay in ruins. Entire worlds had been stripped of their atmospheres, their surfaces scarred by weapons that defied human understanding. Jesus Christ, whispered Lieutenant Commander David Park from the sensor station aboard the Defiance. The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever did this use technology centuries beyond our capabilities. Admiral Webb studied the tactical display with growing horror. The destruction was methodical, complete. Orbital scans revealed the remains of massive cities, industrial complexes, and what appeared to be evacuation ships that had been destroyed while trying to flee. This wasn't random violence or territorial expansion. This was systematic extermination on a scale that challenged human comprehension. Take us to the 3rd planet, Webb ordered. That's where the distress signal originated. And keep the fleet in defensive formation. We don't know if the Reapers are still here. As the human fleet approached what had once been the Zephyrian homeworld, they detected faint signs of life deep underground. Dr. Elena Buscus, who had joined the fleet aboard the research vessel U.S. Discovery, confirmed that the readings matched Zephyrian biological signatures from the transmission data. There are survivors down there, she reported. Thousands of them, hiding in what appear to be reinforced bunkers. But Admiral, the surface radiation levels are lethal. Whatever weapons the Reapers used, they've poisoned the entire biosphere. Webb made the difficult decision to risk detection and sent down a small landing party led by Colonel Maria Santos. The surface of the planet was a wasteland of twisted metal and glass. The air burned with toxic chemicals, and radiation levels required the heaviest environmental suits human technology could provide. What they found in the underground shelters broke their hearts and steeled their resolve. Thousands of Zephyrian survivors huddled in reinforced bunkers, their large, luminous eyes filled with a terror that seemed burned into their souls. The aliens were roughly humanoid, but more delicate, with pale blue skin and elongated limbs that suggested evolution on a peaceful world where violence was rare. Ambassador Kellen was among the survivors, though barely alive. The elderly diplomat had used the last of his strength to coordinate the evacuation efforts before the final bombardment. When he saw the humans, tears streamed down his face. "You came," he whispered through the translation device. "We thought we would die alone in the darkness." Colonel Santos knelt beside the dying alien, her voice gentle despite the urgency of their situation. "We're here now. Tell us about the Void Reapers. We need to know everything if we're going to stop them." Kellen's story painted a picture of ruthless efficiency that chilled the human commanders. The Void Reapers conquered species not for resources or territory, but for the simple pleasure of watching civilizations burn. They were apex predators who had turned warfare into an art form, and they had never encountered meaningful resistance. "They study each species before they attack," Kellen explained, his voice growing weaker with each word. "They learn our weaknesses, our fears, our methods of warfare. Then they exploit everything until nothing remains. They expected us to fight defensively, to protect our cities and populations. When we did exactly that, they used our compassion against us. As the human rescue teams worked to evacuate Zephyrian survivors, Captain Walsh's sensors detected something that made everyone's blood freeze. Massive shapes were moving at the edge of the system, hidden in the shadow of a gas giant. The Void Reaper fleet was still here, watching and waiting like cosmic vultures. "Admiral, I'm reading approximately 200 enemy vessels in the outer system, Walsh reported. They're maintaining position, probably analyzing our ships and tactics. The largest vessels are beyond anything in our threat assessment files. Webb made a command decision that would define humanity's first interstellar war. Instead of retreating or attempting to negotiate, he ordered an immediate attack. The human fleet would strike first, using their greatest advantage, unpredictability. All ships, this is Admiral Webb, he announced over the fleet communication network. The enemy expects us to behave like every other species they've encountered. They expect us to be afraid, to fight defensively, to follow conventional military doctrine. We're going to show them what happens when Death Worlders go to war. The human fleet split into 3 formations, each led by one of Webb's most experienced commanders. Captain Torres took the heavy cruisers and dreadnoughts in a direct assault on the Reaper center line. Captain Martinez led the destroyers and frigates in a flanking maneuver designed to target enemy support vessels. Colonel Santos commanded the fighter squadrons in what she called Operation Hornet's Nest, suicide, runs against the largest enemy ships. The Void Reapers were caught completely off guard. In thousands of years of conquest, no species had ever launched an immediate assault without first attempting diplomacy or defensive positioning. The human ships came screaming out of hyperspace with weapons blazing, targeting enemy vessels with a ferocity that seemed to border on madness. The EU's Defiance led the charge, its Nova cannons tearing through Reaper armor plating like paper. Admiral Webb had ordered all safety protocols disabled. The weapons were firing at 120% capacity, threatening to tear the ship apart with each shot. But the damage to enemy vessels was unprecedented. Direct hit on their command ship, reported Lieutenant Park. Their shields are adapting, but not fast enough. We're punching through their defenses. The space battle that followed defied every principle of conventional warfare. Human ships performed impossible maneuvers, using their own vessels as weapons. When ammunition ran low, fighter pilots flew their craft directly into enemy gun ports, detonating their ships' reactors to create internal explosions. The Reapers had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for victory. Captain Martinez's flanking force struck the enemy supply line with devastating effect. The destroyers US Hurricane and US Typhoon worked in perfect coordination, their crews pushing their ships beyond safe operational limits. When the Hurricane's reactor began to overload, Captain Rodriguez didn't evacuate. Instead, he aimed his ship at the largest enemy vessel he could find. "Tell my family I died fighting," Rodriguez transmitted to the fleet before cutting communications. The Hurricane's destruction took out a Reaper, dreadnought 3 times its size. Escalation and sacrificed initial human assault achieved tactical success beyond all expectations, but it came at a terrible cost. 37 human vessels were destroyed in the first hour of combat, and many more were severely damaged. The Void Reapers, initially stunned by human aggression, began to adapt their tactics with frightening speed. "Admiral, the enemy is learning from our attacks," Captain Walsh reported from the shadow. "Their shield frequencies are adjusting to our weapons. Their movement patterns are becoming more defensive. We're losing our advantage." Webb studied the tactical display with growing concern. The Reapers were doing exactly what the Zephyrians had warned about. They were analyzing human tactics and developing countermeasures. But humanity had one advantage that no other species possessed: the ability to adapt faster than their environment could kill them. All ships implement protocol chaos, Webb ordered. No repeating attack patterns. No predictable formations. Every captain is now authorized to engage at their own discretion. Make it impossible for them to analyze our tactics. Protocol chaos was something that would have terrified military commanders from any other species. It essentially turned the space battle into organized anarchy, with each human ship fighting independently according to the creativity and instincts of its crew. For a species that had evolved cooperation and hierarchy, it would have been suicide. For Death Worlders who had learned to survive by adapting constantly, it was liberation. The EU's Valkyrie, commanded by Captain Sarah Kim, demonstrated the new tactics perfectly. Instead of engaging enemy ships directly, she used her vessel's enhanced engines to play a deadly game of cat and mouse. The Valkyrie would appear behind enemy formations, fire a devastating salvo, then disappear into hyperspace before the Reapers could respond. Each attack came from a different angle, using different weapons, following no predictable pattern. The enemy is trying to predict our next move, Kim reported to Webb, but we're not following any tactical doctrine they've ever encountered. They keep adapting to strategies we're not actually using. Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Vasquez made a crucial discovery aboard the Discovery. While analyzing wreckage from destroyed Reaper vessels, she found something that changed the entire nature of the conflict. The Void Reapers weren't just biological and mechanical, they were connected by a quantum communication network that allowed instant coordination across their entire fleet. "Admiral, I've found their weakness," Vasquez transmitted excitedly. The Reapers share a collective consciousness through quantum entanglement. It's what makes them so efficient in battle, but it's also their vulnerability. If we can disrupt the network, their coordination will collapse. Webb immediately ordered the deployment of humanity's most experimental weapon, quantum disruption. Bombs that could sever the bonds holding matter together at the subatomic level. The weapons had never been tested in combat, and using them carried enormous risks. But desperate times called for desperate measures. Colonel Santos volunteered to lead the bombing run personally. Her fighter squadron approached the largest Reaper vessel, a massive construct that appeared to be the fleet's communication hub. The enemy defenses were overwhelming. Streams of energy weapons and guided missiles filled space with deadly fire. "Hornet leader to all squadrons," Santos transmitted, as her fighter weaved through enemy fire. "Remember, we're not trying to survive this. We're trying to win this. Death before dishonor, pilots." One by one, the human fighters were destroyed by enemy defenses, but each sacrifice brought Santos closer to her target. When her own ship's engines failed, she didn't eject. Instead, she armed the quantum disruption bomb manually and flew her fighter directly into the Reaper communication hub. The explosion that followed was unlike anything seen in the history of warfare. The quantum disruption bomb didn't just destroy the enemy vessel. It created a cascade failure in the Reaper communication network. Across the battlefield, enemy ships suddenly stopped coordinating their attacks. Their perfect tactical unity dissolved into chaos. Victory through determination, asterisk. With their quantum communication network severed, the Void Reapers found themselves fighting as individual ships rather than a unified force. For the first time in their species' history, they were experiencing confusion and uncertainty in battle. The humans, who had lived with uncertainty their entire evolutionary history, pressed their advantage mercilessly. Admiral Webb ordered the final assault, throwing every remaining ship at the disorganized enemy fleet. The U's Defiance led the charge, its weapon systems pushed far beyond safe operational limits. The ship's hull began to crack under the stress, but Webb refused to reduce power. "All power to forward weapons," he ordered. "If we're going down, we're taking as many of them with us as possible." The space battle that followed became legend in human military history. Ships fought with damaged weapons, systems, and failing life support. Crews stayed at their posts even when their vessels were breaking apart around them. The human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but they possessed something the Reapers had never encountered: the absolute refusal to surrender. Captain Torres aboard the UES Thunder demonstrated this spirit perfectly. When his ship's weapons were destroyed, he used the vessel itself as a battering ram, driving it directly into the side of a Reaper dreadnought. The collision destroyed both ships, but it also created a gap in the enemy formation that other human vessels exploited ruthlessly. The turning point came when Dr. Vasquez discovered how to reverse engineer the Reaper quantum network technology using salvaged equipment from destroyed enemy ships. She created a virus that could infiltrate their communication system and turn it against them. "Admiral, I can use their own network to broadcast false commands," she reported. "If I can access their central hub, I can make their ships attack each other." Webb didn't hesitate. "Do it." The virus upload required someone to get close enough to the largest surviving Reaper vessel to establish a direct quantum link. Captain Walsh volunteered her stealth ship for the mission, knowing it was essentially a suicide run. The Shadow approached the enemy flagship using every trick in the human tactical manual as Walsh's ship drew closer to the massive Reaper vessel. Enemy sensors finally detected the approaching threat. The flagship's weapons systems swiveled toward the Shadow, preparing to destroy the small human ship. But Walsh had one final surprise. "Alina, are you ready?" She transmitted to Dr. Vasquez. "Ready," came the reply. "Once I start the upload, we'll have about 30 seconds before they adapt to the virus." 30 seconds is all we need," Walsh replied grimly. She pushed her ship's engines to maximum power, charging directly at the enemy flagship while Vasquez uploaded the virus into their quantum network. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the battlefield, Reaper ships began receiving conflicting orders from their own command structure. Some vessels turned their weapons on their allies. Others broke formation and fled toward the edge of the system. The perfect coordination that had made them unstoppable was turned into a weakness. The human fleet, battered and bloodied but unbroken, pressed their attack with renewed fury. Admiral Webb's voice echoed across the communication network. "This is for Earth. This is for the Zephyrians. This is for every species you've murdered." When the battle finally ended, less than 50 Reaper vessels remained operational, and they were fleeing the system in complete disarray. The human fleet had suffered catastrophic losses. Nearly 2/3 of their ships were destroyed or severely damaged. But they had achieved the impossible. They had defeated the Void, REAPERS, as the survivors of both fleets limped away from the battlefield. Ambassador Keelan's voice crackled over the communication network from the rescue ships. "The galaxy will remember this day," he said, his voice filled with wonder and gratitude. "The Death Welders of Earth have shown us all what it means to refuse surrender. You have saved not just our species, but given hope to every civilization that still fights for freedom." Admiral Webb, standing on the cracked bridge of the damaged Defiance, looked out at the debris field that marked humanity's first interstellar victory. They had paid a terrible price, but they had proven something important to the galaxy. Earth's children would not go quietly into extinction. They were Death Welders, forged by a planet that had tried to kill them for millions of years. And now the galaxy knew what happened when someone threatened their home. Asterisk.